The Tempest. There was a certain island in the sea, the only inhabitants of which were an old man whose name was Prospero and his daughter Miranda, a very beautiful young lady. She had come to this island so young that she had no memory of having seen any other human face than her father's. They lived in a cave or cell made out of a rock. It was divided into several rooms, one of which Prospero called his study. There he kept his books, most of which were about magic. Knowledge of this art he found very useful to him. He had been thrown by a strange chance upon this island, which had been enchanted by a witch called Sycorax, who died there a short time before his arrival. Prospero, through his magic, released many good spirits that Sycorax had imprisoned in the bodies of large trees because they had refused to carry out her wicked commands. These gentle spirits were ever after obedient to the will of Prospero. Of these, Ariel was the chief. The lively little sprite Ariel had nothing mischievous in his nature except that he took rather too much pleasure in tormenting an ugly monster called Caliban. He had a grudge against this monster because he was the son of his old enemy Sycorax. This Caliban Prospero found in the woods, a strange, misshapen thing, far less human in form than an ape. He took him home to his cell and taught him to speak. Prospero would have been very kind to him, but the bad nature which Caliban inherited from his mother Sycorax would not let him learn anything good or useful. Therefore, he was employed like a slave to fetch wood and do the most difficult and tiring work. Ariel was placed in charge of Caliban to see that he carried out these tasks. When Caliban was lazy and neglected his work, Ariel, who was visible to all eyes but Prospero's, would come slyly and pinch him. Sometimes he would tumble him down in the mud. Then Ariel, in the likeness of an ape, would make mouths at him. Then, swiftly changing his shape to that of a hedgehog, he would keep tumbling in the way of Caliban, who feared the hedgehog's sharp quills would prick his bare feet. With many such annoying tricks, Ariel would often torment him whenever Caliban neglected the work which Prospero commanded him to do. Having these powerful spirits obedient to his will, Prospero could by their means command the wind and the waves of the sea. By his orders they raised a violent storm. In the midst of this storm, struggling with the wild sea waves that every moment threatened to swallow it up, he showed his daughter a fine, large ship. On board, he told her, were living beings like themselves. "Oh, my dear father," said she, "if by your magic you have raised this dreadful storm, have pity on their sad distress. See, the vessel will be dashed to pieces. Poor souls, they will all perish. If I had power, I would sink the sea beneath the earth rather than have the good ship destroyed, with all the precious souls within her." "Be not so amazed, daughter Miranda," said Prospero. "There is no harm done. I have ordered that no person in the ship shall receive any hurt. What I have done has been for your sake, my dear child. You do not know who you are or where you came from, and you know no more of me but that I am your father and live in this poor cave. Can you remember a time before you came to this cell? I think you cannot, for you were not then 3 years of age. Certainly I can, sir, replied Miranda. About what? Asked Prospero. About any other house or person? Tell me what you can remember, my child. Miranda said, It seems to me like the memory of a dream, but did I not once have 4 or 5 women who waited upon me? Prospero answered, You had, and more. How is it that this still lives in your mind? Do you remember how you came here? No, sir, said Miranda. I remember nothing more. 12 years ago, Miranda, continued Prospero, I was Duke of Milan, and you were a princess and my only heir. I had a younger brother whose name was Antonio, to whom I trusted everything. As I was fond of going off alone to spend my time in deep study, I usually left the management of my state affairs to your uncle, my false brother, for so indeed he proved. I, neglecting all worldly interest, buried among my books, devoted my whole time to the bettering of my mind. My brother Antonio, being thus in possession of my power, began to think himself the duke indeed. The opportunity I gave him of making himself popular among my subjects awakened in his bad nature a proud ambition to deprive me of my dukedom. This he soon accomplished with the aid of the King of Naples, a powerful prince who was my enemy. Why, asked Miranda, did they not then destroy us? My child, answered her father, they dared not. So dear was the love that my people bore me. Antonio carried us on board a ship, and when we were some leagues out at sea, he forced us into a small boat, without either tackle, sail, or mast. There he left us, as he thought, to perish. But a kind lord of my court named Gonzalo, who loved me, had privately placed in the boat water, provisions, apparel, and some books which I prized above my dukedom. Oh, my father, said Miranda, what a trouble must I have been to you then? No, my love, said Prospero, you were a little cherub who preserved me. Your innocent smiles made me bear up against my misfortunes. Our food lasted till we landed on this desert island, since when my chief delight has been in teaching you, Miranda. And well, have you profited by my instruction? Heaven thank you, my dear father, said Miranda. Now pray tell me, sir, your reason for raising this sea storm. Know then, said her father, that by means of this storm my enemies, the King of Naples, and my cruel brother, have been cast ashore upon this island. Having so said, Prospero gently touched his daughter with his magic wand, and she fell fast asleep. For the spirit, Ariel, just then appeared before his master to give an account of the tempest, and to tell what he had done with the ship's company. Though the spirits were always invisible to Miranda, Prospero did not choose to have her hear him talking, as would seem to her, to the empty air. Well, my fine spirit, said Prospero to Ariel, how have you performed your task? Ariel gave a lively description of the storm and of the terror of the sailors. He told how the king's son, Ferdinand, was the first who leaped into the sea, and how his father thought he saw his dear son swallowed up by the waves and lost. But if he is safe, said Ariel, in a corner of the isle, sitting with his arms folded, grieving at the loss of the king, his father, whom he believes drowned, not a hair of his head is injured, and his princely garments, though drenched in the sea waves, look fresher than before. That's my delicate Ariel, said Prospero. Bring him here. My daughter must see this young prince. Where's the king and my brother? I left them, answered Ariel, searching for Ferdinand, whom they have little hopes of finding, thinking they saw him perish. Of the ship's crew, not one is missing, though each one thinks himself the only one saved. The ship, though invisible to them, is safe in the harbor. Ariel, Prospero said, your charge is faithfully performed, but there is more work yet. Ariel, said Prospero, your charge is faithfully performed, but there is more work yet. Is there more work? Said Ariel. Let me remind you, master, you have promised me my liberty. Remember, I have served you well, told you no lies, made no mistakes, served you without grudge or grumbling. How now, said Prospero. You do not remember what a torment I freed you from. Have you forgotten the wicked witch Sycorax, who was almost bent double with age and envy? Where was she born? Speak, tell me. Sir, in Algiers, said Ariel. Oh, was she? Said Prospero. I must recount where you have been, since I find you do not remember it. This bad witch, Sycorax, for her witchcraft, too terrible to repeat, was banished from Algiers, and here left by the sailors. Because you were a spirit too delicate to execute her wicked commands, she shut you up in a tree where I found you howling. This torment, remember, I freed you from? Pardon me, dear master, said Ariel, ashamed to seem ungrateful. I will obey your commands. Do so, said Prospero, and I will set you free. He then gave orders as to what else he wanted him to do, and away went Ariel, first to where he had left Ferdinand. He found him still sitting on the grass in the same sad position. Oh, my young gentleman, said Ariel, when he saw him, I will soon rouse you. You must be brought, I find, to where the Lady Miranda can see your handsome face. Come, sir, follow me. He then began singing. Full fathom 5 thy father lies, of his bones are coral made. Those are pearls that were his eyes, nothing of him that doth fade, but doth suffer a sea change into something rich and strange. Sea nymphs hourly ring his bell. Hark, now I hear them, ding dong bell. This strange news of his lost father soon roused the prince from the stupor into which he had fallen. He followed in amazement the sound of Ariel's voice. Till it led him to Prospero and Miranda, who were sitting under the shade of a large tree. Now, Miranda had never seen a man before, except her own father. Miranda, said Prospero, tell me what you are looking at yonder. Oh, father, said Miranda in strange surprise, surely that is a spirit, Lord, how it looks about. Believe me, sir, it is a beautiful creature. Is it not a spirit? No, girl, answered her father. It eats and sleeps, and has senses such as we have. This young man, you see, was in the ship. He is somewhat changed by grief, or you might call him a handsome person. He has lost his companions and is wandering about to find them. Miranda, who thought all men had grave faces and gray beards like her father, was delighted with the appearance of this beautiful young prince. Ferdinand, seeing such a lovely lady in this desert place, and from the strange sounds he had heard, expecting nothing but wonders, thought he was upon an enchanted island, and that Miranda was the goddess of the place. As such, he began to address her. She timidly answered. She was no goddess, but a simple maid. She was going to give him an account of herself when Prospero interrupted her. He was well pleased to find they admired each other, for he plainly saw they had, as we say, fallen in love at first sight. But to test Ferdinand's love, he decided to throw some difficulties in their way. Therefore, advancing forward, he spoke to the prince sternly, accusing him of having come to the island as a spy, to take it from him who was the lord of it. "Follow me," he said. "I will tie you, neck and feet together. You shall drink seawater, shellfish, withered roots, and husk of acorns shall be your food." "No," said Ferdinand, "I will resist such entertainment till I see a more powerful enemy," and drew his sword. But Prospero, waving his magic wand, fixed him to the spot where he stood, so that he had no power to move. Miranda clung to her father, saying, "Why are you so ungentle? Have pity, sir. Trust him to me. This is the second man I have ever saw, and to me he seems a true one." "Silence," said the father. "One word more will make me scold you, girl. What? You plead for an impostor? You think there are no more such fine men, having seen only him and Caliban? I tell you, foolish girl, most men as far excel this man as he does Caliban." This he said to test his daughter's love. She replied, "My affections are most humble. I have no wish to see a finer man." "Come on, young man," said Prospero to the prince. "You have no power to disobey me." "I have not indeed," answered Ferdinand, not knowing that it was by magic he was deprived of all power of resistance. He was astonished to find himself so strangely forced to follow Prospero. Looking back at Miranda as long as he could, he said, as he went after Prospero into the cave, "My spirits are all bound up, as if I were in a dream. But this man's threats and the weakness which I feel would seem light to me, if from my prison I might once a day see this fair maid." Prospero did not long keep Ferdinand confined in the cell. He soon brought out his prisoner and gave him a difficult task to perform, taking care to let his daughter know the hard labor he had set him to do. Then, pretending to go into his study, he secretly watched them both. Prospero had commanded Ferdinand to pile up some heavy logs of wood. King's sons not being much used to heavy work, Miranda soon after found her lover almost dying of fatigue. "Alas," said she, "do not work so hard. My father is at his studies. He is good for 3 hours. Please rest." "Oh, my dear lady," said Ferdinand, "I dare not. I must finish my task before I rest." "If you will sit down," said Miranda, "I will carry your logs the while." But to this Ferdinand would by no means agree. Instead of a help, Miranda became a hindrance, for they began a long conversation, so that the business of log carrying went on very slowly. Prospero, who had set Ferdinand this task merely as a test of his love, was not at his books, as his daughter supposed, but was standing by them invisible, to overhear what they said. Ferdinand inquired her name, which she told, saying it was against her father's express command that she did so. Prospero only smiled at this first instance of his daughter's disobedience, having by his magic art caused his daughters to fall in love so suddenly. He was not angry that she showed her love by forgetting to obey his commands, and he listened well pleased to a long speech of Ferdinand's, in which he declared he loved her above all the ladies he had ever seen. In answer to his praises of her beauty, which he said was greater than that of all the women in the world, she replied, "I do not remember the face of any woman, nor have I seen any more men than you, my good friend and my dear father. What other people look like, I know not, but believe me, sir, I would not wish any companion in the world but you, nor can I imagine any other shape but yours that I could like. But, sir, I fear I talk to you too freely and forget my father's orders." At this, Prospero smiled and nodded his head as much as to say, "This goes on exactly as I could wish. My girl will be Queen of Naples." And then Ferdinand, in another fine long speech, for young princes speak in courtly phrases, told the innocent Miranda he was heir to the crown of Naples, and that she should be his queen. "Ah, sir," said she, "I am a fool to weep at what I am glad of. I will answer you in plain and holy innocence. I will be your wife if you will marry me." Prospero prevented Ferdinand's thanks by appearing visible before them. "Fear nothing, my child," said he. "I have overheard and approve of all you have said. And Ferdinand, if I have too severely treated you, I will richly make up for it by giving you my daughter. All your troubles were but trials of your love, and you have nobly stood the test. Then, as my gift, which your true love has worthily purchased, take my daughter, and do not smile when I boast she is above all praise." Then, telling them that he had business which required his presence, he asked them to sit down and talk together till he returned. This command Miranda seemed not at all disposed to disobey. When Prospero left them, he called his spirit Ariel, who quickly appeared before him, eager to relate what he had done with Prospero's brother and the King of Naples. Ariel said he had left them almost out of their senses with fear at the strange things he had caused them to see and hear. When they were fatigued with wandering about and famished for want of food, he had suddenly set before them a delicious banquet. Then, just as they were going to eat, he had appeared visible before them in the shape of a harpy, a fiercely hungry monster with wings, and the feast had vanished away. Then, to their utter amazement, this seeming harpy spoke to them, reminding them of their cruelty in driving Prospero from his dukedom, and leaving him and his infant daughter to perish in the sea. For these reasons, said the harpy, they had been afflicted with such terrors. The King of Naples and Antonio, the false brother, regretted the injustice they had done to Prospero. Ariel told his master he was certain they were truly sorry, and that though he was only a spirit, he pitied them. "Then bring them here, Ariel," said Prospero. "If you, who are but a spirit, feel sorry for them, shall not I, who am a human being like themselves, have pity on them? Bring them quickly, my dainty Ariel." Ariel soon returned with the king, Antonio, and old Gonzalo in their train. They had followed him, wondering at the wild music he played in the air to draw them on to his master's presence. This Gonzalo was the same who had so kindly provided Prospero with books and provisions when his wicked brother left him, as he thought, to perish in an open boat in the sea. Grief and terror had so stunned them that they did not know Prospero. He first revealed himself to the good old Gonzalo, calling him the preserver of his life. Then his brother and the king knew that he was the injured Prospero. Antonio, with tears and sad words of sorrow and true repentance, begged his brother's forgiveness. The king said he was truly sorry for having assisted Antonio to overthrow his brother. Prospero forgave him. When they promised to take steps to restore his dukedom, he said to the king of Naples, "I have a gift for you too." Then, opening a door, he showed him his son Ferdinand playing chess with Miranda. Nothing could outdo the joy of the father and the son at this unexpected meeting, for each thought the other drowned in the storm. "Oh, wonder," said Miranda, "what noble creatures these are. It must surely be a brave world that has such people in it." The king of Naples was almost as much astonished at the beauty and excellent manners of the young Miranda as his son had been. "Who is this girl?" asked he. "She seems the goddess that has parted us and brought us thus together." "No, sir," answered Ferdinand, smiling to find his father had fallen into the same mistake that he had done when he first saw Miranda. "She is a mortal, but by immortal providence she is mine. I chose her when I could not ask you, my father, for your consent, not thinking you were alive. She is the daughter of this Prospero, the famous Duke of Milan, of whose fame I have heard so much about, but whom I never saw till now. From him I have received a new life. He has become a second father to me, giving me this dear lady." "Then I must be her father," said the king. "But oh, how oddly it will sound that I must ask my child forgiveness." "No more of that," said Prospero. "Let us not remember our past troubles, since they so fortunately have ended." Then Prospero embraced his brother, and again assured him of his forgiveness. He said that a wise, overruling providence had permitted that he should be driven from his poor dukedom of Milan, that his daughter might inherit the crown of Naples. For by their meeting in this desert island, it had happened that the king's son had fallen in love with Miranda. These kind words, which Prospero spoke, meaning to comfort his brother, so filled Antonio with shame and remorse that he wept and was unable to speak. The kind old Gonzalo wept to see this joyful reconciliation and prayed for blessings on the young couple. Prospero now told them that their ship was safe in the harbor, with the sailors on board her, and that he and his daughter would accompany them home the next morning. "In the meantime," said he, "help yourselves to such refreshments as my poor cave affords, and for your evening entertainment I will relate the history of my life from my first landing in this desert island." He then called for the Caliban to prepare some food, and set the cave in order. The company were astonished at the uncouth form and savage appearance of this ugly monster, who, Prospero said, was the only attendant he had to wait upon him. Before Prospero left the island, he dismissed Ariel from his service, to the great joy of that lively little spirit. Though he had been a faithful servant To his master, he had always longed to enjoy his freedom, to wander uncontrolled in the air like a wild bird, under green trees, among pleasant fruits and sweet-smelling flowers. "My quaint Ariel," said Prospero to the little sprite when he made him free, "I shall miss you, yet you shall have your freedom." "Thank you, my dear master," said Ariel, "but allow me to see your ship safely home with favorable winds before you bid farewell to the assistance of your faithful spirit. Then, master, when I am free, how merrily I shall live." Here Ariel sang this pretty song: "Where the bee sucks, there suck I. In a cowslip's bell I lie. There I couch when owls do cry. On the bat's back I do fly. After summer merrily, merrily, merrily shall I live now, under the blossom that hangs on the bough." Prospero then buried deep in the earth his magical books and wand, for he was resolved never more to make use of the magic art, and having thus overcome his enemies, and being reconciled to his brother and the King of Naples, nothing now remained to complete his happiness but to revisit his native land, to take possession of his dukedom, and to attend the happy marriage of his daughter and Prince Ferdinand, which the king said should be instantly celebrated with great splendor on their return to Naples. At this place, under the safe escort of the spirit Ariel, they, after a pleasant voyage, soon arrived.